hard-pressed, honestly, to find a car you can enjoy more on the roads than this, because borderline, you can enjoy this even more than my GT3. Now, I'm not saying I like it more, but I'm saying it's really close. Like, you're literally pulling at straws, trying to determine which is the better car, the car is more fun to drive. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Miami Miles. My name's Mickey. In today's episode, I've got perhaps my most impactful comparison ever. Today I'm comparing my GT3, the 991.2 GT3 Touring, against, that's right guys, the 718 Cayman GT4. I am so tired of all the videos, all the forums, all the keyboard warriors like, Porsche's holding this car back on purpose. Listen, Johnny, I'm with you. You know, I would think that too if I was in your position, but after having driven this thing, I don't know how much they're really holding it back, because it's quite an animal. And in case you guys don't know, it's not like Porsche was able to fit this 4-liter into here, because any of you that follow the brand and know the RS cars really good, or the GT cars really good, you know that this 4-liter does not fit in here, which is why for this car, they had to take that twin turbo 3-liter from the Carrera, remove the turbos, bore and stroke it to 4 liters to give it 414 horsepower and make it fit in this chassis. So yeah, it's a little underpowered to that. It's a little bit heavier to that. But guys, are they really holding it back, or is it just that they're two completely different cars? Well, let's start with the exterior. I think one of the most important things we can do is look at these cars from the outside. From the onset, we see that the GT4 honestly is not as small as you think. Look at its footprint, right? And when we compare it to my GT3, and I apologize that it's so dirty, but I'm getting that PPF scuff from the accident in the back replaced on Monday, so I haven't washed it. You can see that it's not that much bigger. You would think that the GT3 is at least a foot wider, at least 3 feet longer, but the truth of the matter is that the car is not that much wider nor that much longer. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that the Cayman, the 718 Cayman GT4, is a little bit longer than the GT3. Now, I haven't looked up the numbers, but at least that's what it looks like visually. Also, for those of you that don't know, and contrary to what everyone thinks, this car is much heavier than this car. So this car weighs 3,250 pounds or thereabouts, and this car weighs about 3,115 pounds. So a delta of 130 to 140 pounds, wherein this car is heavier. Shocking. I know everyone thinks the GT4 is the lightest thing in the world, but the 718 GT4 just is not that light, especially this one's fitted with the PDK. I wanted to drive the PDK and not the manual, to be honest, because everybody complains about how long the gears are in the manual for that car. I mean, they're just as long in the GT3, but I think the GT3 has about 100 more horsepower, so the torque kind of negates those long gears. Nonetheless, let's go for a drive of these two cars, and I'm going to tell you if Porsche is really holding that thing back, or if this thing's actually approaching this car in terms of driving engagement. Now guys, keep in mind, if we realize that this car right here is getting close to this is a hell of a bargain. You can get one of these for about $120,000. That car right there, I mean, that's a touring, that's a special example. A regular 991.2 GT3 is going to set you back $180,000, $190,000. So there's a $50,000 to $60,000 price difference between these two cars, and essentially all that you're paying for is the engine, right? This is the Cup Car 4-liter. This is the 4-liter derived from the Carrera. Is $60,000 worth it for this? For the magic, for the fizz, for the emotion that this car gives you from 8 to 9? Well, we're gonna find out. So let's go ahead and jump in this guy, the GT4 first. Go for a drive. Go for a little drive. I don't know why I always make that motion, but giving me the opportunity to drive one of these things is like me. It's like I'm about to go make another baby. But anyways, guys, let's go for a drive, and I'm gonna give you my raw impressions on these cars back to back and let you know if really Porsche is holding this car back. So anyways, let's go for a drive. All right, guys, so here we are in the GT4. Listen to this. Now at this point, you've probably seen already my review on this car on the last video I posted to the channel. So you've got a pretty good idea how I feel about this car. It's pretty spectacular. Oh man, where do I start, guys? All right, so let's talk about everything that this car has to offer relative to the GT3. The first thing that I want to touch upon is that 4-liter. Now, in my last last video, I touched upon how this 4-liter captures some of the same magic as does the 4-liter in my GT3. But the bottom line is, guys, there is a 9/10, right, subdued, tuned down version of that engine in this. This is 9/10 of that. It sounds really good, but it only sounds really good when you're going over 6,500 RPM. Like in the GT3, it sounds much deeper, much more meaty, much more throaty at about 4,000 and 5,000. This sounds much lighter. Listen to that, like, I mean, it sounds okay. Where it really excels is here. If you drive it how it's supposed to be driven, definitely gives you some of the same feels, some of the same tingles, some of the same sensations that does the GT3, but it doesn't give you quite the peak of emotion. Like, how do I explain this? Imagine the difference between having sex with someone and then having sex with the best, most compatible partner in the world, right? There's just a distinction between the two. One is good, pretty good, maybe even great, but the other one is absolutely exceptional. It's a transcendental experience, and that's what the GT3 engine is compared to this one. As you guys know, my GT3 is a manual car, a 6-speed on the Touring. It did not come with a PDK. This PDK, I think, is absolutely brilliant. Look, upshift, instantaneous, upshift, upshift. Oh! Honestly, guys, for this engine, I think this is a transmission to get. As everyone says in all the reviews, the gearing in the manual for this car is much too long. And I would imagine, or I would see why that would ruin or taint the experience just a little bit. Because here, you can play with the gears. Yeah, this is a really good transmission, and honestly, this combination of this transmission and that engine in this car make it feel just as sporty as the GT3. Like, I don't feel like I'm missing anything relative to the GT3. And I think an additional point that must be taken into account is the steering, the nimbleness. And I touched upon this again on the review, but this car feels so controlled, so sublime, and it gives you so much confidence to just go in and out of traffic. When you're taking a turn and you turn it in to the curb, you feel as it darts into the apex. So when you think of the 911, which we're gonna drive next, its handling is really good. It's got a tremendous amount of grip, but for some reason, I don't feel as in control of the 911 as I do in this. Like, just here in traffic, and of course Miami has the worst traffic in the world, but right here within traffic, it's just so nimble. And I said this in my review, but the way it turns lanes and it switches from one lane to the other is so satisfactory. It's so satisfactory that it makes you just want to turn this amazing steering wheel. The amount of feedback and sensations that I'm getting through the tires, up the rack, through this into my fingertips. Honestly, I think I get more steering feel in this than I do in my GT3. Again, we're gonna drive them back to back and I'm gonna give you my impressions then, but overall, this is a car that feels like it should be on a racetrack. This is a car that feels like you would be so comfortable exploiting its every limit, whereas the GT3, guys, feels like it'll bite you in the face if you misbehave. That's the difference between the two. That's a distinction with the handling. And I think that's a good segue into the brakes. So the brakes in this car, and I can't test them out right now because I'm in the middle of traffic. Hopefully in a moment, I'll be able to really exploit this car when I merge on this other freeway. Nonetheless, the brakes feel identical to the GT3. They require a tremendous amount of pressure, and when you push the brakes down, right, they take a moment to engage, and you have to push really hard to get them to bite even harder. So I'm not the biggest fan, like I said in my review, about the brakes in this car, but honestly, they're good enough to help you get the most out of the car on street. So here we go. Brakes. Yeah, the brakes are really good, and the way it engages the ABS, honestly, is really smooth to the point that you never feel like you're out of control. So right now, I'm merging on to 836, and there's some nice curves here, right? Actually, let me get off here. God, dude, this car, it just handles so well. It handles so well. Like, I just have so much confidence to drive it around just like this, and then nothing's gonna happen. Even if someone were to come out in front of me, we are so far from this car's limits that it just feels safe. Oh, look at the turning radius too. Listen to this, right underneath this overpass. Listen to this. Listen to this. I love this thing, man. Oh man. And that confidence, honestly, that you get from the engine, from the transmission, from the handling, from the brakes, just exudes confidence throughout this entire chassis, throughout the whole driving experience. Like, I feel like I'm totally in control of the car at all times. So thus far, right, having not driven the GT3 yet, honestly, I'm gonna go back to back. So if I were to speculate, I would say the engine in the GT3 is probably a couple notches above this. I would say the steering in this is just a little more satisfactory. And then the brakes are the same, those are a wash. And the handling, okay? The handling is, I would give just a slight edge to this because it feels just a little more playful, whereas the 911 feels like it's got this absolute level of grip until you hit the limit, at which point I wouldn't be surprised if you spun the car out. Like, I've never taken it to those limits. I've never taken my 911 to the limits. I've just taken this GT4. And I guess that says a lot about this car. It gives you this sense of confidence where you can actually enjoy it on a day-to-day basis and drive it around at 8/10 or 9/10 and not feel like you're gonna endanger yourself or those around you, right? And I think that's gonna be the big distinction between this and that car. So, what is my opinion about this car? Has Porsche let the GT4 encroach on the GT3? I think the answer is yes. I think this is a bona fide competitor to its bigger brother, the GT3. I think not only it gives you just as good of a feel, the engine is almost as good, the braking is identical, the steering is so sublime, like it gives you almost everything that the GT3 does, albeit in a package that looks a little different, and in my opinion, I'm gonna be controversial here, a little bit better. I think that this car looks a little better than does the GT3. So, is it the better car though? That's what we're gonna do now. So I'm gonna head back, I'm gonna turn around, jump back on the freeway, give this thing the beans a couple more times, and then head back to my house and swap it out for the GT3. Here we go. Guys, what are you doing, baby? Yeah, dude. You just feel like you can beat this car up all day, every day. Going over this little bridge here. Dude, I would just drive it around like this. Like, honestly, you can't do this in the GT3. You kill yourself. Onto the red limiter, third, brakes. Oh, man. Like, I think you would be hard-pressed, honestly, to find a car you can enjoy more on the roads than this, because borderline, you can enjoy this even more than my GT3. Now, I'm not saying I like it more, but I'm saying it's really close. Like, you're literally pulling at straws, trying to determine which is the better car, the car is more fun to drive. I can tell you, though, hold on. Ah! Oh, man, I can tell you guys, though, that this is a hell of a car. Oh, back in the GT3, baby. Right away, we've got a clutch and a manual gearbox, a little bit different than the GT4, but let's take the key, put it into the ignition. Oh, the sound, guys. Oh, I love this car. So let's go and see if our good friend the GT4 measures up. All right, guys, so I just departed my house and merged onto the freeway, and right away I can feel some differences between the GT4 and the GT3. Let's start with the seats. The seats in this car are much more comfortable, akin to how I got out of the 458 Italian to these seats. These seats feel like you're getting an automatic massage even from the carbon back seats in the GT4. And no, don't get me wrong, those seats are very comfortable for what they are, but they're not as comfortable as these. That being said, these seats nowhere near hold you and bolster you in place as much as those 918 racing buckets, which gives that car a little bit more of a racy feel from the seat of your pants. Now, the second thing that I saw that's completely different in this car from the GT4 is the engine. From startup, the car resonates so many more vibrations through the chassis, up your butt through the seat, and into your very soul. These vibrations make the engine feel that much more engaging, and I think that's translated so well into the power and the sound of this car. Listen to this. That's where the differences are between the two cars, guys. This 4-liter right here, right behind my head, is an absolute masterpiece. Like, I thought the GT4 engine had me grinning like a little kid, but this thing has such a hard edge to it. look, it's lighting up the traction control up here on the freeway at 55 miles an hour. That's something a GT4 didn't do. Honestly, the GT4 felt underwhelming underneath about 6,000 RPM, and it wasn't until 6 that it really got on cam and really started to peel your face off. This car feels like it wants to kill you at 5,000 RPM. There's honestly a lot of differences between the two cars, man. The engine in this is like, I don't know, it's like comparing Mozart to a master musician that never became famous. This is what we consider one of the all-time greats, and that is just something that's really, really good. That's the differences between the two engines. But that's where the GT3's vast advantage starts minimizing itself, because then when we get to the steering, honestly, although this car feels very, very nimble, it is not as nimble as the GT4. Like, I feel like I'm floating over bumps just a little bit more. I feel like the steering is much less immediate than it was in the GT4. And then on the braking side, well, the brakes feel, guys, honestly, pretty much the same. But then we're back to the engine. Yeah, this thing's much more powerful, man. I think this has got a good 120 horsepower over that. At least that's what it feels from the seat of my pants. So engine goes to this, handling to the GT4, braking, wash, transmission. Well, obviously this is a manual, that's a PDK. That PDK honestly is so damn engaging. It's to the point that it makes it difficult for me to choose. Honestly, if I was getting a GT4, I'd get it in a PDK, but this car with its amount of power and torque is definitely better suited with this manual gearbox. This manual gearbox makes for a hell of a driving experience. Like, it just makes everything so engaging. But if we were to take this manual gearbox away and equip this with the PDK, which car is better? Well, I think that this car edges out the GT4 just because it's so damn engaging in regards to its engine, right? I can't drive it at 9/10. This car is a lot more of a sledgehammer to the face than is the GT4. I can't drive it at 9/10. Like, here, I'm at 6,000 RPM, going the same speed that I was getting in the GT4 at, I don't know, 7,000 RPM, going about 96 kilometers an hour. This car's just got way more power. You can't enjoy it as much on the roads. And that's perhaps a GT4's party trick, is the fact that you can enjoy the shit out of it on a road like this. You can really enjoy it, but you're not gonna get yourself killed. This car is right on the fence of being alive and being dead. One little mistake, right, and you're screwed. Whereas the GT4 felt like you could exploit the shit out of it every single moment of the drive. Listen to this. We're already going so damn fast. There is a big difference in terms of power between the two cars. Don't get me wrong, guys. Big difference. So guys, what is my verdict on these two cars? Has the GT4 encroached on the GT3? The answer is, in terms of driving engagement, dynamics, and fun, I think it has. I think you get a 9/10 GT3 in a better handling package for a half the price, and that's a hell of a proposition, guys. So let's go through the characteristics one more time. Engine, by a long shot, this was more spectacular. Handling, GT4, just a little bit better. Braking, equal, okay? Transmission, this manual is obviously better, but the PDK is exceptional. Let's call that a wash. So basically we're comparing the differences in handling, which that car has an advantage in, versus the difference in the powertrain, which this car is miles beyond the GT4. Like, I was driving the GT4 blown away by its engine, but then I got back in this thing and I was like, oh yeah, that's the difference between a regular engine from a Carrera and a racing engine. This thing feels like it's gonna bite your head off. So guys, the decision to the winner of this comparison comes down to, how do you want to enjoy your cars? Do you want to enjoy your car on the road to 10/10 or 9.5 out of 10? Well, then your car, if you want to do that, is the GT4 with the PDK, because I can tell you I was beating the shit out of it, enjoying the shit out of it, and it gave me everything I wanted back. This car, you can only enjoy it at 8/8, and you have to pick your poison and pick your place to go 10/10, because if you go 10/10 in the wrong place, it would bite you in the face. This does not feel like a car that's forgiving. This feels like a car that will assassinate you given enough leeway. That's why I've never taken the traction control off of this thing, because I know it will bite me in the face. than the GT4. So guys, for me, if I could only have, you know, let's say one car for every purpose, it would be this. It would be the GT3, no doubt, no holds barred, for sure the GT3. But if I had to get rid of the GT3 for some reason, i.e. my 765 is coming in, what would be my daily driver? And honestly guys, I think the winner of that competition as a daily driver, the GT4, is just a little bit better of a proposition. Anyways guys, I hope that you enjoyed that comparison. Hope that you enjoyed that video. If you did, go down below, give me a subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I look forward to seeing you next video, baby. Take care.